Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the MEGA Annual Meetings event, Catalyzing Environmental, Social, and Governance Investment. My name is Inkem Onwamibu, and I'm a senior underwriter here at MEGA. We have a fantastic event in store for you, and before we start, I'd like to share a few housekeeping rules. First, today we'll be using the hashtag ESG Today. So we encourage you all to join in on the online conversation. Secondly, we will have a question and answers portion at the end of the panel. You should find cards on your seats and where you can write down some questions, and please hand them to one of our MEGA event coordinators who are around the room today. And lastly, there'll be an after-event reception downstairs in the Global Hall, I believe MCC1, and we invite you all to join us after the event. And with that, I'd like to invite to the podium Keiko Hondo, the Executive Vice President and CEO of MEGA, to kick off the event with a few words. Keiko, please.
Thank you, Inkem. Good afternoon and welcome. I complete my term as CEO at the end of this month, so this is my last time to host annual meetings. It is a time for reflection. I remember my first meetings at MEGA nearly 7 years ago. At that time, the former CFO of the World Bank Group said to me, Keiko, MEGA is the hidden gem of the World Bank Group. But I saw a much grander vision for MEGA. I thought, MEGA is not any gem. It is a hidden diamond for the world, and investors need to know about it. So we got to work, and the MEGA team has done a phenomenal job. MEGA guaranteed annual investment has doubled, and the MEGA's guarantee portfolio has also doubled to over $23 billion. MEGA's influence and development impact has grown and grown. The ripple effect of our goals to end extreme poverty and promote shared prosperity can be seen and felt around the world. Over the last 6 years, the guarantee MEGA has provided 50 million people with access to power. 50 million is the population of Spain. Homes in Bangladesh that were once lit by candles now have electric-powered light, so children can do homework. In Turkey, entire communities have access to state-of-the-art healthcare. In various parts of the world, private investors support local women entrepreneurs. One example is that at Zito power plant located in Côte d'Ivoire. Last year, I visited the power plant and I asked the plant manager why they decided to help the women-led cassava food processing cooperative, providing them machines and equipment. His answer was simple and humble. He turned to me and said, my mother had a cassava business, and she used her earnings from the business to send me college. My education is the reason I am the power plant manager. I want to give back. Not only our private investors achieving their investment objective through working with MEGA, they are supporting communities. They are helping to change people's lives. Over the years, I watched the evolution of the private investors focus more on ESG investment. People started to talking about ESG investment in January 2004, when former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan invited over 50 CEOs of major financial institutions to participate in a joint initiative under the auspices of the UN Global Compact. And then came August 19th, 2019. That day, the Business Roundtable announced a commitment from the participating major US corporations to focus on the benefit of all stakeholders, not only maximizing the profits for shareholders, but also to consider other stakeholders, such as customers, employees, suppliers, and communities. Major private financial institutions declared to practice ESG investment. This is a big moment. Now, let me tell you, I have dedicated 25 years of my career to understanding shareholders. I even wrote a book about shareholders' value maximization in Japan. So, trust me, when major private financial institutions commit to practice environmental, social governance investment, it is a big moment. And it is an important moment for MIGA and the World Bank Group, a moment for which MIGA is perfectly positioned. ESG investment is still at an early stage. Many are still defining ESG. MIGA, along with the World Bank and IFC, can play a big role. We can contribute in 3 areas. Firstly, World Bank has developed country strategy, which became a joint initiative with IFC and MIGA. It is called Country Partnership Framework, or CPF, in which World Bank and the government discuss and agree upon focus area for development and where private investors are welcome. Secondly, World Bank Group set the bar for the standardizations. IFC developed environment and social standard bar in 2012. MIGA joined in 2013. Our economic and sustainability performance standards are well documented and are publicly available on our website. The World Bank also set the standards for green bonds. Finally, MIGA and IFC has the knowledge and resources to implement proper ESG investment. It is one thing to understand, it is another to implement. Having come from the private sector, I am amazed and what MIGA, World Bank Group, and IFC can do in the ESG investment. If you work with us, MIGA can help you. MIGA staff have exceptional expertise, incredible energy, and a willingness to solve difficult problems. Our team is made up of environmental social experts, underwriters who understand how to structure the project while fulfilling the ENS standard, lawyers, reinsurance specialists, to name a few. The MIGA team is not large. We are a team of 138. I want you to meet them. May I ask MEGA team to stand up? You are the expert in the field and a dedicated team members. You have been my teachers in many ways, for which I am grateful. It has been my honor to know you and work with you. So please join me again in recognizing their contribution. I would also like to thank governors, board members, private investors, and our partners, MEGA staff, for giving me the opportunities to serve MEGA during the last 6.5 years. I take with me many fond memories and an expanded understanding of the world. A larger wave of ESG investment is coming. I leave MEGA knowing there is a strong need for this agency. The world needs it, and MEGA can deliver development impact. MEGA certainly is a precious diamond, and the world is beginning to value it. Thank you so much for coming today.
And thank you, Keiko, for those comments and remarks and your reflections over the last 6.5 years. We will miss you. And now we'd like to show a video that showcases our ESG investments as supported by MEGA. Thank you.
Investors and lenders today care not only about shareholder value, but also environment, social and governance issues, or ESG. ESG investments have increased by 34% over the past 2 years to an estimated $30.7 trillion today. And they come from across the world. American investors representing $7 trillion in annual revenue recently urged companies to factor the environment, ethical business conduct and worker well-being alongside pursuit of profits. New EU rules require that financial institutions disclose their ESG and sustainability risks as part of their fiduciary responsibility. And Japan's Government Pension Investment Fund, GPIF, the largest pension fund in the world, follows the principle of Sanpo Yoshi, which advocates benefits to the seller, the buyer, and the local community.
For us, the way that we think about the link between ESG and value creation is that it helps us build high-quality companies that are well-governed, ethical, apply international standards, and have a deep social license to operate with their communities. All of that helps us build companies that are more resilient and higher quality and ultimately more valuable. And we know that our buyers will pay a premium for companies with these characteristics.
A project MEGA recently supported, Parc Éolien Taiba Ndiaye Wind Farm, is helping private equity investor Actis enhance its ESG agenda.
Donc le projet éolien Taiba Ndiaye, c'est un projet unique en ce sens que c'est le premier et le plus grand projet éolien de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Le projet consiste à mettre en place 46 turbines d'éoliennes ici à Taiba Ndiaye. Donc la production totale sera de 156,8 MW qui seront cédés à la communauté Taiba Ndiaye. Donc c'est une production d'énergie éolienne fournie par le vent qui sera injectée dans le réseau Sénélec et qui sera utilisée par la population sénégalaise. Notons que beaucoup vient de la communauté de Taiba Ndiaye.
The project is also creating tangible social impact on the ground through women empowerment programs. 2 new marketplaces in the Taïba Ndiaye commune have been created for women vendors.
ndax fii lañ daan toog ngelaw bi ñëw di ramasser suñu bagage ko sant yàlla ci lii nu am ndax bari nañu ko bëgg te amuñu fi ne nii maanaam njaayum lekk rek légumes ak jën keccax géej gi yooyu daal ñaam bi xam nga fii environ 8 villages la presque tey sax maanaam amatuñu benn jafe-jafe.
Les femmes se sont organisées de sorte que chaque femme, avant de rentrer, remettait la modique somme de 25 francs. Cette somme était destinée à l'entretien de l'infrastructure de l'édifice qu'on a construit pour les femmes de Mbayène.
Across the world, MIGA is helping investors improve lives. Projects supported by MIGA will provide nearly 50 million people with access to power, deliver health consultations to 21 million patients, enable $17.3 billion in financing for SMEs, create 116,000 direct jobs, and offset 7.4 million metric tons of CO2 per year.
Our impact framework allows MIGA and its partners to understand and to measure the expected development impact of our projects across several dimensions, including development reach and sustainability.
So MIGA guarantees play a crucial role for us because it provides us as the investor and also our own investors who entrust us with their capital with the comfort that we need that some of the key risks in our markets are mitigated. Secondly, access to MIGA professionals gives us access to a broader range of ESG specialists, and we can tap into their knowledge and their expertise. And having that extra layer of scrutiny ensures that we can continue to apply best practice during our operations.
At MIGA, we have over 30 years of expertise with helping investors be a part of the solution. We are a reliable partner, and we stand ready to work with investors looking to make a difference.
Inspire a very interesting and lively conversation from our panel. So we're going to turn over to the panel portion of the event, where Joel Weber of Bloomberg Business Week will moderate the panel and lead the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to MIGA for having us. My name is Joel Weber. I'm the editor of Bloomberg Business Week magazine. It's an honor to be on the stage with Rocky Kumar, who's the Senior Managing Director and Head of ESG Investments and Asset Stewardship at State Street Global Advisors, Sujoy Bose, who's the CEO of the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund of India, and Vijay Iyer, who's the Chief Operating Officer of MIGA. So thank you all for being up here with me. Rocky, I want to start with you. What is ESG as someone who gets to do it every day, and why is ESG important to an investor like State Street Global Advisors?
Thanks, and good afternoon, everyone. So I will tell you what it's not. This morning I heard someone define ESG as eye roll, sneer, and groan. It's definitely not that. It is environmental, social, and governance issues, as you saw in the video. And we think of ESG as low probability, high impact factors. The probability of something going wrong because of ESG is low, but when it goes wrong, it really does impact value. So examples I like to give is Chipotle. The stock was going up, and as soon as we found out that they don't wash their lettuce, guess what happened to the stock price? It hasn't been able to recover. Volkswagen, Wells Fargo. There's so many examples out there about what can go wrong if you're not watching the shop here. Now, we at State Street Global Advisors are the 3rd largest asset manager in the world. We have about $3 trillion of assets under management. And most of these are index strategies, which means that if our clients want us to deliver benchmark returns, which could be the S&P 500, we have to invest in the S&P 500. We can't make the S&P 500 S&P 499. So that's an example of where, as a long-term investor, this is part of our fiduciary responsibility. We have to really engage with companies and focus on ESG to ensure that we're looking at a company from a performance perspective which is broader than just financial performance.
Great. I also just want to remind everyone that there will be questions that we'll take from everyone. So go ahead and start thinking about what questions you'd like to ask. And there will come a time in about 20 minutes where we'll turn to you. Sujoy, I want to turn to you. So how does the National Investment in Infrastructure Fund of India define ESG goals?
So I'm going to, first of all, a great congratulations to Keiko and the MEGA team for what has been achieved over the last several years. It's just amazing. And when I think of NIIF and building up NIIF, I hope we can follow the path that you guys have set over the last few years in terms of the growth, the scale, the profitability. Incredible jobs. Congratulations.
I think I was supposed to do that, but yeah, you got it. Thank you.
I'm going to answer your question with a story. And
I like stories. Most people like stories, so go ahead.
Thank you. We are an infrastructure fund. In India, affordable housing is considered to be infrastructure. It's actually given the infrastructure status. It's a huge opportunity. We've invested in a fund with the top manager for affordable housing, where we are actually developing a lot of affordable housing in the urban cities of the country. We have an investment in our fund from the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, so we follow all the procedures, the processes, the systems for environment and social that AIIB requires. And we've passed those on to this fund manager. And there's been lots of moans and groans, including real estate developers will never be willing to accept these standards. Anyway, we forced these through. They had to be done, and we got them done. And as a revenge, I think, they invited me to their investor conference to speak about ESG in real estate. So I went to this conference, and I was wondering, how do I present this? Because this is a very hostile, sort of an environment. And basically, I started by saying that I'm not an ESG expert. I'm not a real estate expert. But I know how to raise money. And if you look at the institutional investment world today, it's about $70, $80 trillion. Of that, 40% of them have actually embraced ESG standards and will not invest in a manager or in a company unless those managers and companies meet those standards. And India is basically a huge land of opportunity, but people investing in India find difficult to actually invest through the right partners because not too many partners have the ESG capabilities that international investors require. So basically, the point I made to that group was, if you want to raise capital at scale, get with it and become leaders in ESG. And that's actually what we've done at NIIF. So we identified very early on that the gap in the market was not opportunity, it was not demand, it was not growth. It was actually the right partners with the right capabilities on ESG, and we positioned NIIF exactly in that mode. From day one, we've not only got the systems, processes, etc., but we've developed a culture. So I come from 25 years at IFC, so obviously it's in my DNA. Developed a culture where ESG is basically what we do in a way. Now, if you think about building large infrastructure, large-scale infrastructure assets, they include land acquisition, they include environmental approvals, etc. And in many cases, they have serious impact, negative and positive, on communities around those projects. So working with those communities to actually address these ENS issues with the right governance is what really separates the best projects from the others. And finally, what we also believe very clearly is if a project today that is being done is developed without the right ESG standards, capabilities, you will not be able to exit those projects. So even as an investor, it's very crucial to ensure that our projects and our investee companies have the right ESG capabilities to make sure that their value on exit, and Rocky spoke a little bit about those aspects, values on exit are as high as they can be.
So you started by talking about affordable housing as one of those, right? So, and I love examples. Can you give us a couple other examples of where you've been able to actually use your ESG framework to deploy capital?
Sure. I mean, I'll give you two specific examples. So we have actually created a fund. So we and DFID of the UK, we actually anchored a fund for climate, investing in climate in India. This is a fund that's basically right now we've developed a renewables platform. So we operate both in a direct investing mode as well as in an indirect investing mode because we have a substantial amount of capital, so we can actually deploy that capital in different ways. And so what we've done is we've created a fund and we've also created a platform, an operating company, to develop renewable assets. So we've become one of the large renewables developers in India. But we are also looking at sectors such as waste management, water and sanitation, including treatment of water. So one of the big issues in India that's coming down the pike is water. And we are very clearly focused on what we can do in that segment in a commercially profitable manner. So we've created several of these things. One other example I'll give you is highways. In emerging markets, and this is not just in India, toll collection is an issue not because vehicles don't want to pay tolls when they're going long distance, but more importantly, how it impacts local communities. So people who are actually doing short distances and get impacted by those toll booths. So what we do is around those toll areas, we engage with the local communities to build schools, hospitals, etc. So the local communities are very clearly seeing the benefits of having a capital-intensive, revenue-generating project in their community. And in rural areas, in some cases, these are the only services, the only healthcare and education services that these people in these communities have.
So I gather that ESG is sort of important here at MIGA. Vijay, just how important is it to MIGA now and going forward?
Actually, Sujoy set it up very nicely with that story. I think it captures very well how we see promoting and boosting high standards on ESG as critical to building value. And for our clients, it is not just a question of we try to move them from a mindset of compliance to a mindset of seeing this as an opportunity to build value in their investment, finding ways in which they can distinguish themselves from the competition, create value in their asset for the longer term, and in that process actually make their project more stronger because it's more integrated into the community, it's more integrated into the kind of sustainability that investors and others are starting to put a value on. So we have always had environment assessment and environment assessment standards since 2002, and MIGA's sustainability framework includes has included a widely adapted IFC performance standards, which we have sort of adapted to MIGA. So the framework has, in the course of the years, been strengthened, and we look at several impact areas in the SDGs. For instance, we look at climate change, community and stakeholder engagement. We look at human rights and gender. And in assessing the projects, we ensure that looking at not just how these are meeting the standards, but how we can help our clients to build the capacity, get the knowledge in order to embrace these standards, adopt them to their projects, and actually use them as a way to enhance it in terms of value as well. So it's more a question of partnering, finding opportunities for engagement, building capacity. As you saw in the video, the wind project that you saw, already the company has a very aspirational approach to embracing good standards, high standards. But we also work with companies that don't have that and try to build that into their approach the project so that in the process of meeting those standards, they are also elevating the sustainability of the project.
You said a couple words in there I thought that really stand out to me. One, values, purpose. You got the E, you got the S, you got the G, Rocky. What are the trends that you're seeing as an investor who's looking at this space that, I mean, frankly, if you look at it, it just looks like hockey stick growth in terms of assets. So what kind of trends are you seeing that the audience might find interesting?
Right. So from an infrastructure perspective, I'm going to take it first at the macro level and then at the investment level. At the macro level, climate is definitely one of the biggest systemic ESG issues that is being addressed globally. And particularly for emerging markets, it's something in every conversation we have from a policy perspective to an actual project perspective, it's understood that unless you include emerging markets, you're not going to get anywhere with regards to actually addressing climate change issues. And from an infrastructure perspective, it's important to recognize, to evaluate not only what kind of impacts the project will have on the environment around it, and you gave the toll booths, etc. example, but it's also important to understand and assess the resiliency of the infrastructure that you're building and you're investing in. So those aspects have to be incorporated into the entire framework. And then on the another macro trend is, this is not just investors, this is people. This is, especially in emerging markets, it's society asking for these issues, right? It's the pollution is very clear and present when you're in
open the window.
China, exactly, China or India, right? And so this is where some of the demand and the societal aspect of it is very important. And now on the investment side, some of the trends we're seeing in emerging markets is it's starting to be seen as a fiduciary responsibility. It's no longer, it's moving from the it feels good to do this and it gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling to this makes sense, this is important to do. And that goes into this conversation of moving from a values-based motivational aspect to a value-based motivational aspect. This makes good business sense. The reason real estate, in REITs, they start looking at environmental issues is because they can charge higher rents, because you're going to have more efficiency, etc. I think overall, you're seeing the need for education. It's a very fast-moving market. It's very, like I said, the definition for ESG is very different.
So on that note, as part of education, all this stuff comes with risk.
Yeah.
So Sujoy, when you look at your investments, how do you look at the risk? How do you assess it? How do you mitigate it? Where's there room for opportunity?
So we have a very, very clear process in terms of ESG. Actually, sometimes we say ESG, but sometimes I feel governance actually takes a much higher priority, because if you have good governance, ENS will follow. If you don't have good governance, ENS often gets diluted. So we start with making sure that whatever company we are investing in has the right level of governance. On our team, we basically have ESG experts. We have a clear-cut, a three-stage process of, sort of an early decision, and then a due diligence, and then a final decision. And at each stage, we make sure that all the ENS risks are measured, monitored, and mitigated. And at least, you can't zero them out always, but there's always has to be a mitigation plan and management plan for that risk. And then finally, what we do is, in terms of the people that we choose to work with, that is where, and again, it comes back to governance and culture, in my view. The people that we work with are the people that the companies that we partner with are companies that consider these risks to be as important and managing the risks to be probably far greater than anything else. So we are partnering with some of the top operating companies from around the world, and basically we are positioning NIIF as a leader, with this concept of we are looking beyond commercial impact in terms of what we do, And because of that process, that system, and the culture, and when people speak to us, they see the passion that we have around this subject. And as a result, very quickly, in about a couple of years, we've managed to put together what is today the largest fund in the country, the largest fund manager in the country. And we've also managed to attract the highest quality of investors, such as Ardia from Abu Dhabi, Temasek from Singapore, Ontario Teachers from Canada, Australian Super, which is the largest Australian super fund, AIIB, and also the largest Indian financial institutions, which all have investments, by the way, from some of the multilaterals, that we're talking about, and have to follow the same standards.
I think we call that a humble brag. Well done. So Vijay, just wanted to ask you, when you look at how you get to talk to many investors, you get to see examples of success like this, how does MEGA fit into it? And what do investors get from MEGA?
So, as I said in the beginning, this is extremely important to us to make sure, because we see that ESG performance is highly correlated with project success and outcomes. We look for, as a development institution, we look for development impact in our projects. And we help in the origination stage itself by applying our impact framework, where we do an ex-ante assessment of the impact that the project is likely to have along several dimensions. And we then create a system of being able to generate the data for measuring those impacts along the life cycle of the project.
So it's actually very tangible, because you have data that you can measure against.
Yes, we can measure against, and in the process, while we are doing that, we are also helping the investor to set up their own systems in terms of measuring the value of the project and creating the relationships, as you mentioned on the toll road example, for instance, creating the relationships within the community, looking at some of the environmental risks, what mitigations need to go into it. And therefore, over a period of time, as we originate the project and take it to implementation, we have already created a system within the project for environmental, social, and governance aspects to be measured, understood, and also maybe develop the capacity, help the client develop the capacity to manage them. Because the correlation, as I said, is very strong in terms of what happens on the ESG side versus what happens with the project eventually in terms of realizing its development impact. And we owe it to our countries where we implement these projects to bring high-quality investors who are responsible, who are looking upon it as a responsible way of investing and realizing the value from it.
So I'm going to turn over here, because remember when I asked for questions, and now we're going to see if we have any. Do we have some? While we're waiting for more. Someone has beautiful cursive. Do the panelists have any concerns that in case of a global recession, the increases we have seen recently in the uptick of ESG performance will be lost?
I can tell you, I've been in this field for about 20 years, gone through 2 financial crises. Every time there's a financial crisis, ESG becomes more important, not less. Because capital will start chasing good assets.
I don't think so. I think countries, companies are figuring out that having a focus on ESG actually brings cost efficiencies as well. Simple case, we'll talk about an energy efficient building. Your energy consumption is down by 50%. Water consumption is lower. Solid waste is managed much more efficiently. So I think what the world has started to I think renewables is here to stay. I mean, it's not going anywhere. So I think the world has realized by and large that the business case of ESG has been proven, and they are seeing that on a daily basis. So I don't think it's going anywhere.
Okay. Another question from the audience. Do the panelists fear that ESG washing is prevalent? So this is the idea that you say one thing and you're doing another and maybe not getting caught. So how concerned are you that ESG might get a bad rap when stories like that come to bear?
Yeah, so definitely greenwashing, as people call it, is a concern for many people. And I like to give two examples. The first one is we've set up a scoring system to get an assessment of companies. And we use the SASB framework. I'm not going to go into details, but we call it R factor, responsibility factor. And when we scored a company on its ESG factor, let's say this is a electric car company based in California, I won't name it, but when we look at their score, they, from an ESG perspective as defined by SASB, they perform pretty okay, marginally above global peers. But when we compare them to the brown companies in Detroit as well as in Japan, and by brown I mean the gasoline car manufacturers, they actually underperform significantly. So the question we have to ask is not renewables good or bad, but are the renewables being made in a green way too? So that's something which needs to be addressed. And the second example I'd like to give is if you really, what the expectation is because investors are waking up to greenwashing. So they need to see impact and measurement attached to any kind of performance. And you know, I heard of some.
How do you actually measure impact? We heard Vijay give us one example. So from I mean, this is huge. You guys are indexing all over the place. Like, how do you measure it?
Yeah, so like I said, you know, there are many different ways, and I don't know if you want to stick to infrastructure, but for companies, what we decided to do was actually look at the financially material ESG factors as defined by a third-party framework, which is SASB. And if none of y'all, if y'all have not done so, you should go to the SASB.com, SASB.org. .org, and look at their materiality map. For every sector, including infrastructure, they will tell you the core metrics that you should be looking at that are material to business, ESG metrics. And then they tell you how to report against it, what to put in the numerator, what to put in the denominator, because they're setting standards. Because if we want measurable data, we need it to be delivered by companies, and at this point there is no common standard for companies. So we as investors don't really fight about where the sales figures is right or wrong. We get it off Bloomberg because it's self-reported by companies. But we are paying a lot of money to a lot of data providers. You paid me for that.
Yeah, no, I did not.
No, but we do pay a lot of money for this. So
yeah, I'll pay you later, though. We have another question. I also want to mention that the first question came from online. So if you're online and watching, you do have the ability to ask. A couple more here just to round it out. How much are investors willing to pay for the cost of ESG impact measurement so that MEGA does not have to put guarantees anymore?
Sorry, what was the last part?
So that MEGA does not have to give guarantees anymore.
Well, we would love to be in the business of not giving guarantees, because that would mean that there is very little or no risk perception for investors. And but till that happens, we do want to make sure that wherever we are engaged, we try to bring the best standards to bear, and try and, as we were discussing, you know, good ESG is ultimately good business. So we are trying to make the case that when you adopt good ESG standards, you also realize it in the economic value of the project, whether it be in the sustainability or in the returns that you get eventually. Yep. So hopefully we are able to build the cost of ESG performance into the project, and it all becomes part of the sort of the guarantee cost that we ascribe to the project.
This is a great question, and I'm really excited. Do we have any more that we're going to do from the audience? Okay, so we'll make this the last one from the audience. Can you speak to what is the frontier of ESG investing? Cutting edge. What's a cutting edge of how an approach to ESG? You're good at case studies and examples.
Well, so I'll give you something I heard this morning again, and it's not about the eye roll sneer, but it is about this Enel. It's an oil and gas company in Italy, and
this is ENIL, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Ian.
You got it.
So this company who believes that it's very ESG friendly and it's incorporated in performance and strategy, found an innovative way of raising capital. What they decided to do was to actually put in ESG performance metrics into their entire costing, and they said that if we don't achieve these metrics, we'll pay a higher coupon price. And that resulted in the impact narrative, which is very important for ESG investors to be identified. And then also, it was oversubscribed, and it helped the company from a cost of capital perspective.
Frontier, Sujoy?
I live in a country, in India, I live in a city in Mumbai where there's so much to be done that, for me, every day of what we do on ESG is a frontier. I think the biggest challenge that the country is going to face very soon, I alluded to it, is water. And rejuvenating the rivers, which have really dried up. Focusing on drinking water, where the water table has really sunk, with the sort of with excessive use of water for agriculture. The water problem, in my mind, is the biggest problem that looms for many of the emerging countries. And I think we have ideas of cost-effective ways to tackle energy, to tackle transportation, but I'm not sure we've really come up with a cost-effective way of tackling the water problem at the scale that it will have to be tackled. So I'm going to put a lot of my thinking into what to do about water in India. And I think that's going to be the frontier for us.
Okay. Bijoy?
So this is actually a very fast-moving space, and you see every day new and new examples of things that are happening in this space, which seem to be, touching the frontier. So if you look at some of the recent developments, biodegradable plastic, for instance, it's a huge step forward in terms of how we start to look at packaging and materials going down the road. I can give a good example from my previous employer, Rio Tinto, which has pioneered this brand of aluminum, which is produced entirely with renewable energy, and they even call it renewal. So there is actually a premium on that aluminum when it goes into the market, because companies that put a high premium on corporate social responsibility are willing to purchase that aluminum as opposed to other aluminum which does not have the certification of having come from renewable energy sources. So every day you see examples where ESG is starting to build value, and that value is attracting more and more innovation, more and more drive in finding new solutions to old problems that are more environmentally friendly, are more community friendly, and create a more responsible approach to business.
So on that note, I think we'll wrap now, and I just want to say to Vijay, Sujoy, Rocky, thank you so much for being here and for enlightening us about ESG, and thanks again to MIGA.
Leading such a lively discussion. And I'd like to thank you all for coming to MIGA, to the MIGA Annual Meetings event. And thank you as well to the online audience and for your questions, both from the live audience and from the online space. And now I'd like to encourage you all to take what you've heard from the panel and continue the conversation downstairs in the Global Hall for our evening reception. That's located at the C1 downstairs level. So thank you again, and thank you for attending the event.